The boardroom went silent when Naomi walked in. Not because they recognized her. They didn't. She'd made sure of that. New haircut, designer suit that cost more than her old car, confidence she'd spent 6 months building in therapy, and spite. No, they went silent because she was black, female, and clearly not the elderly white man they'd been expecting. "Gentlemen," Naomi said, setting her briefcase on the mahogany table, "I believe you're waiting for the majority shareholder of Whitmore Industries. That would be me." Charles Whitmore, her ex-husband, dropped his pen. His mother, Evelyn Whitmore, went pale as snow. "What is this?" Evelyn's voice was ice and disbelief. "Some kind of joke?" "No joke, Evelyn." Naomi pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, I own 51% of Whitmore Industries stock, which makes me the majority shareholder, which makes this," she gestured to the room full of shocked white men in expensive suits, "my board meeting." Before we go on, make sure you're subscribed and share where you're watching from. Trust me, this story hits close to home. It could happen to anyone. Charles found his voice. "That's impossible. We checked. Our largest shareholders are institutional investors, pension funds, hedge funds. Were." Naomi smiled. It was sharp enough to cut. "I've been quietly buying shares through shell corporations for the past 8 months. Small purchases. Nothing to trigger SEC notifications. Nothing to alert your very expensive team of lawyers." She sat down at the head of the table, where Evelyn had sat for 30 years. "Surprise." Evelyn's hands trembled with rage. "You can't do this. We'll fight it. We'll sue." "On what grounds? I purchased shares legally on the open market. I have the capital. I followed every regulation." Naomi opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. "But please, do sue me. I'd love to have this conversation in a public courtroom. I'm sure the press would be fascinated." The threat hung in the air like smoke, because everyone in that room knew what this conversation meant. The real story of why Naomi had left, why the marriage had ended, why Charles's perfect family image was built on lies. "What do you want?" Charles asked quietly. Naomi looked at him. The man she'd loved. The man who'd stood beside his mother while Evelyn destroyed her piece by piece. "I want what's mine," she said. "And I'm just getting started." 2 years ago, Naomi had been Mrs. Charles Whitmore III, young wife of a billionaire heir, living in a Connecticut estate that looked like something out of a period drama. Attending charity galas, smiling for cameras, playing the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. It had all been a lie. She'd met Charles at Columbia Business School. He was brilliant, charming, and seemed genuinely different from the other trust fund kids. He talked about changing the family business, modernizing it, making it more ethical. "My mother runs it like it's 1950, he'd told her over coffee. "But when I take over, things will be different." Naomi had believed him. They'd dated for 2 years, got engaged on a beach in Santorini, married in a ceremony that made the society pages. And for about 6 months, she'd actually been happy. Then Evelyn Whitmore had started her campaign. It began subtly. Comments about Naomi's hair. "Have you considered straightening it for the gala?" Questions about her family. "And what do your parents do?" said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Suggestions about her wardrobe. Perhaps something more traditional for the board dinner. Naomi had tried to brush it off, tried to believe Charles when he said, "Mother means well. She's just old-fashioned." But it escalated. Evelyn forgot to invite Naomi to family gatherings, made decisions about the household without consulting her, introduced her to business associates as Charles's wife without using her name, spoke about her in third person while she was in the room, and Charles did nothing. "She's my mother," he'd say. "What do you want me to do? She's from a different generation. Just give her time." But time didn't help. 1 year into the marriage, at a family dinner, Evelyn had said it out loud. "You know, Charles, I ran into Victoria Ashford yesterday. Such a lovely girl, from such a good family. I always thought you two would end up together." Naomi had been sitting right there. "Mother," Charles had started. "Oh, I'm not saying anything against your current situation," Evelyn had continued, not looking at Naomi. "I'm just saying that sometimes we make choices based on novelty, and then we realize what we've lost." Naomi had excused herself, gone to the bathroom, cried silently for 10 minutes. When she came out, Charles was laughing with his mother about something else entirely. He hadn't defended her, hadn't corrected Evelyn, hadn't even checked if she was okay. That's when Naomi knew she would never belong in this family, because they didn't want her to belong. The breaking point came 18 months into the marriage. Naomi had been invited to speak at a conference on corporate ethics, her area of expertise, before marrying Charles. She'd been excited. Finally, a chance to use her MBA for something other than planning seating charts for dinner parties. The night before the conference, Evelyn had called. "Naomi, darling, I need you to cancel your little speech tomorrow. We have the Vanderbilt Foundation luncheon, and I need you there to smile and look presentable." "I can't cancel, Evelyn. I committed months ago." "Then uncommit. Charles needs you there to support the family's image." "Charles can handle one lunch without me." Evelyn's voice had turned to steel. "You know what your problem is, Naomi? You forget your place. You're not a business professional anymore. You're a Whitmore wife. And Whitmore wives support their husbands. They don't chase their own silly ambitions." Naomi had been too shocked to respond. "I'll expect you tomorrow at noon. Wear the cream Chanel. And do something about your hair." Evelyn had hung up. Naomi had stood there shaking with rage and humiliation and made a decision. She gave the speech. It was brilliant. She received a standing ovation. And when she came home, Charles was waiting. "Mother is furious," he'd said. Not "are you okay" or "I'm proud of you." Just "Mother is furious." "I don't care." "Well, you should. This is embarrassing for the family." "Embarrassing?" Naomi had stared at him. "I gave a speech at a professional conference. How is that embarrassing? You defied Mother. You made us look bad. Made you look bad. Or made me look like I have a mind of my own." Charles had sighed, like she was a difficult child. "Naomi, you knew what you were marrying into. The Whitmore family has expectations. The Whitmore family can go to hell." She'd filed for divorce the next day. The divorce had been brutal. Charles's lawyers had buried her in paperwork. The prenup, which she'd signed without fully reading because Charles had assured her it was just a formality, left her with almost nothing. A small settlement, her personal belongings. That was it. The estate, the cars, the art collection, the investment accounts, all stayed with Charles. "You should have read what you signed," Evelyn had said at the final settlement meeting. Her smile was victorious. "But I suppose girls from your background aren't taught to be careful with legal documents." Naomi had wanted to scream, to throw something, to make them understand how much they'd hurt her. Instead, she'd signed the papers, taken her small settlement, and left. But not before making a promise to herself. They will regret this. All of it. The first thing Naomi did was call her former mentor, Dr. Patricia Chen. Patricia was a venture capitalist who'd taken Naomi under her wing during business school. Brilliant, cutthroat, and utterly unimpressed by old money families. "I need to learn how to play their game," Naomi had said. "Better than they do." Patricia had smiled. "Then let's get to work." For 6 months, Naomi lived like a monk. She took her divorce settlement, $500,000, an insulting amount given Charles's wealth, and invested it carefully. tech startups that Patricia recommended, stocks that were undervalued, small, smart bets that multiplied. She studied Whitmore Industries, learned everything about their business, their shareholders, their vulnerabilities, and she discovered something interesting. Whitmore Industries had been struggling for years. Evelyn's old-fashioned management style was bleeding money. The company's stock price had dropped 40% in 5 years. Institutional investors were getting nervous. Some were selling, and Naomi was buying. She created shell corporations, nothing illegal, just layers of privacy. Purchased shares in small batches, never enough to trigger SEC reporting requirements, never enough to attract attention. 8 months of patient, careful accumulation. And then, this morning, she'd crossed the threshold. 51%. Majority control. The Whitmore family empire now belonged to the woman they'd tried to erase. "This is extortion," Evelyn said, standing abruptly. "You're trying to blackmail us." "I'm trying to run a company," Naomi corrected. "The company I now own the majority of. But if you'd like to discuss blackmail, we can talk about how you forced Charles to fire his black CFO because you thought he didn't fit the company image. Or how you buried sexual harassment complaints against your VP of operations because he's your godson. Or, enough." Charles's voice was sharp. "What do you want, Naomi?" She looked at him. Really looked at him. He seemed smaller than she remembered, weaker. "I want you off the board," she said simply. The room erupted. "You can't. That's insane. We'll fight this." Naomi waited for the noise to die down. "Actually, as majority shareholder, I can remove any board member I choose, including family members." She pulled out another document. "This is a resolution to restructure the board, effective immediately. Charles, you can stay on as a VP if you'd like, but your mother," she looked directly at Evelyn, "is done." Evelyn's face was purple with rage. "I built this company. My father founded it. I've run it for 30 years. And in those 30 years, you've driven it into the ground. Stock price down 40%. Revenue declining. Employee turnover at record highs. You've been so busy protecting your little kingdom that you forgot how to actually run a business." Naomi stood. "But don't worry. I'm going to fix it." "You?" Evelyn laughed. It was bitter and cruel. "You're going to run Whitmore Industries? You couldn't even run your own marriage." The words landed like a slap. For a moment, Naomi felt like the woman who'd cried in the bathroom during family dinners. The woman who'd been told she didn't belong. The woman who'd been made to feel small. Then she smiled. "You're right, Evelyn. I couldn't save my marriage. Mostly because I was married to a coward and his mother was a racist who couldn't stand seeing a black woman at her dinner table." Naomi leaned forward. "But I can save this company, and I will. Starting by removing every trace of your poison from it." She gathered her papers. "Board meeting adjourned. Evelyn, security will escort you out. Your personal items will be shipped to your home. Your access to the building is revoked as of now." "You can't! Charles!" Evelyn grabbed her son's arm. "Charles, do something!" But Charles just sat there, staring at the table. Because he knew, they all knew, Naomi had won, and there was nothing they could do about it. Security arrived, 2 professional men in suits who treated Evelyn with polite firmness. She left screaming about lawyers and revenge and family legacy. When the boardroom cleared, only Naomi and Charles remained. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why go to all this trouble? You got your settlement. You got out. Why come back?" Naomi looked at the man she'd once loved. "Because you let your mother destroy me, and you did nothing. Because you chose her over me every single time. Because you made me feel like I was crazy for expecting basic respect." She picked up her briefcase. "And because I wanted you to know what it feels like to lose everything. I loved you." No, you didn't. Naomi walked to the door, then paused. You loved the idea of me. The progressive son who married a black woman. The modern Whitmore breaking with tradition. But when it got hard, when it meant actually standing up to your mother, you folded. She looked back at him. That's not love, Charles. That's cowardice. She left. Outside the building, Patricia was waiting with champagne. How'd it go? Patricia asked. Evelyn called me extortionate. That's how you know you won. Patricia popped the cork. So what's next? CEO announcement? Press conference? Naomi looked up at the Whitmore Industries building, at the name that had made her feel so small for so long. First, we're changing the name. I'm thinking Bennett Whitmore Industries. Bennett was her maiden name. Then we're restructuring, bringing in new leadership, diverse leadership, people who actually know how to run a 21st century company. And Evelyn? Evelyn gets to watch everything she built get dismantled and rebuilt better. Naomi smiled. That's the real revenge, not destroying them, showing them how much better things can be without them. Patricia raised her glass. To the new majority shareholder. To taking what's mine, Naomi corrected. They drank. And across town, in a Connecticut estate, Evelyn Whitmore threw a crystal vase against the wall and screamed. But no one was listening anymore. Her kingdom was gone, and the woman she'd tried to erase now owned everything. That night, Naomi's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Whitmore? A woman's voice, familiar somehow. Or should I say, Ms. Bennett, now. Who is this? Victoria Ashford. We met a few times during your marriage. I'm Charles's ex-girlfriend, the one Evelyn always thought he should have married. Naomi's voice was flat. What do you want? To offer you information, and maybe an alliance. Naomi's interest piqued. I'm listening. Evelyn's been calling everyone she knows, old money families, her society friends. She's trying to orchestrate a hostile takeover. Get enough shareholders to vote you out before you can consolidate power. That won't work. I have majority control. You have 51%. She only needs to convince a few large institutional investors to vote against you in the next shareholders meeting. Make you look unstable, inexperienced, vindictive. Victoria paused. She's very good at destroying women, Naomi. Trust me, I know. Why are you telling me this? Because Evelyn Whitmore made my life hell when I dated Charles. She decided I wasn't good enough either. Old money, but not the right old money. She spent 2 years sabotaging our relationship. Victoria's voice hardened. When you married Charles, I actually felt sorry for you. I knew what was coming. Sorry enough to help me. Sorry enough to watch Evelyn burn and pour gasoline on the fire. Victoria laughed. I have information. Names of board members she's blackmailing. Financial irregularities she's hidden. I've been collecting it for years, waiting for the right moment. And what do you want in return? A seat at the table. Not on the board. I don't want that drama. But a consulting position. Access. A chance to watch the Whitmore empire get rebuilt by someone who actually deserves it. Naomi considered this. Victoria could be lying. Could be working for Evelyn. Could be setting a trap. Or she could be exactly what she claimed. Another woman Evelyn had tried to destroy who wanted revenge. Send me what you have, Naomi said finally. I'll review it. If it's legitimate, we'll talk. You won't regret this. I've regretted a lot of things in the past 2 years. What's one more? Victoria laughed. I like you, Naomi. You're tougher than you look. I had to be. Your ex-boyfriend and his mother made sure of that. After hanging up, Naomi stood at her apartment window looking out at the city. The war wasn't over. Evelyn wouldn't go down without a fight, and Charles, weak as he was, Still had connections, money, and nothing left to lose. But Naomi had something they didn't. She had nothing to prove to them anymore. She'd already won. Now she just had to keep winning. Her phone buzzed. An email from Victoria Ashford with the subject line, "The Whitmore Files." Naomi opened it. Inside were documents that made her eyes widen. Financial statements, emails, photos, proof of everything Victoria had claimed and more. This wasn't just ammunition. This was a nuclear weapon. Naomi smiled slowly. "Oh, Evelyn," she whispered. "You have no idea what's coming." The Whitmore files painted a picture of corruption so extensive that Naomi spent 3 hours just cataloging it. Bribes to city officials, tax evasion schemes hidden in offshore accounts, payments to silence harassment victims. And at the center of it all, Evelyn Whitmore, pulling strings like a puppet master. "This is enough to send her to prison," Patricia said, reviewing the documents in Naomi's apartment. "Securities fraud alone could get her 10 years. Prison isn't the goal." Naomi closed her laptop. "Exposure is. I want everyone who ever believed her lies about me to see exactly what kind of woman she is." "And Charles?" Naomi pulled up an email chain. Charles's name appeared throughout, approving questionable expenses, signing off on suspicious contracts, looking the other way while his mother built her empire of secrets. "He knew," Naomi said quietly. "Maybe not everything, but enough. He knew enough and did nothing. So what's the play? We go public, but carefully. Leak it to the right journalists. Build the narrative before Evelyn can control it." Naomi stood and paced. "She's already trying to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife. We flip that. Show that I'm the whistleblower exposing corporate corruption." Patricia smiled. "I know just the reporter, Sarah Chen at the Financial Times. She's been trying to expose Whitmore Industries for years, but the family's lawyers always shut her down." "Not anymore." Naomi picked up her phone. "Set up a meeting, off the record, somewhere private. And Patricia, make sure Sarah knows this is bigger than a divorce story. This is about corporate accountability." They met Sarah Chen 2 days later in a private room at a restaurant in Brooklyn, far from Evelyn's Manhattan social circles. Sarah was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and skeptical. She'd been burned by false leads before. "Mrs. Whitmore," "Bennett," Naomi corrected. "I went back to my maiden name." "Ms. Bennett, I'll be honest. When Patricia said you had information about Whitmore Industries, my first thought was bitter ex-wife with an axe to grind." Sarah opened her laptop. "So, convince me this is real." Naomi slid a folder across the table. "That's a summary. Bank statements showing Evelyn Whitmore paid $500,000 to City Councilman Robert Torres to approve zoning changes for a Whitmore Industries development in Queens. Emails where she discusses handling sexual harassment complaints by paying victims and having them sign NDAs. And financial records showing she's been siphoning company funds into personal accounts for years." Sarah's eyes widened as she read. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter?" "For legal purposes, yes. If this was obtained illegally, it was obtained by someone who had legitimate access to these files. Someone inside the company who kept copies because they knew one day the truth would come out." Naomi leaned forward. "Can you verify it?" "I'll need time. I'll need to cross-reference, contact sources, build corroboration." "How much time?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. "You have 1 week." Naomi stood. "Because in 1 week there's a shareholders meeting. Evelyn is trying to use it to vote me out. She's telling everyone I'm unqualified, vindictive, dangerous for the company. I need this story to break before then." "That's not enough time to make it enough." Naomi's voice was steel. "Because if you don't, this story dies. Evelyn will crush me, take back control of the company, and bury this evidence so deep no one will ever see it." She paused. But if you break this story first, if you expose what she's been doing, you'll have the biggest corporate scandal of the year, maybe the decade. Sarah looked at the documents, then at Naomi. You're taking a huge risk. If this backfires, if any of this is wrong, it's not wrong. Evelyn Whitmore is a criminal who's been hiding behind money and status for 30 years. I'm just finally shining a light on her. Naomi grabbed her coat. 1 week, Ms. Chen. Show the world who she really is. The leak happened exactly 6 days later. Naomi was in her new office at Whitmore Industries. She'd moved in immediately, claiming the CEO suite before Evelyn could block it, when her phone exploded with notifications. Financial Times. Exclusive. Whitmore Industries. Matriarch, allegedly involved in decades of corporate fraud. The article was devastating. Detailed. Impossible to dismiss as speculation. Sarah Chen had done her job perfectly. Within an hour, every major news outlet was running the story. Cable news had panels discussing it. Social media was on fire. #Whitmore scandal was trending worldwide. Naomi watched the coverage on 3 screens, sipping coffee that tasted like victory. Her phone rang. Charles. She almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. You destroyed her, Charles said. His voice was hollow. My mother is getting death threats. Reporters are camped outside her house. The SEC is opening an investigation. Your mother destroyed herself, Naomi replied calmly. I just made sure people knew about it. This is about revenge. This is about justice. There's a difference. Naomi stood, looking out her office window at the Manhattan skyline. Every person your mother hurt, every person she paid off, every career she destroyed to protect her empire, they deserve to know the truth. You're going to send her to prison? I'm going to let the legal system do its job. If she goes to prison, it's because she committed crimes. Naomi paused. But Charles, you're in those documents too. Not as much as Evelyn. But enough. You signed off on things you knew were wrong. You looked the other way because it was easier than standing up to her. Silence. I'm offering you a choice, Naomi continued. Tomorrow's shareholders meeting, you can stand with your mother, defend her, go down with her ship, or you can resign from the board quietly, issue a statement saying you had no knowledge of the illegal activities, distance yourself, save your own skin. Naomi's voice hardened. It's more than you gave me when I needed you to choose between your wife and your mother. Naomi, I'm not finished. If you choose to resign, I'll make sure your name stays out of the worst of it. You'll lose your position, but not your freedom. But if you fight me, if you stand by Evelyn, she let the threat hang. I have more documents, ones with your signature on them, ones that prove you knew exactly what was happening. That's blackmail. That's a business negotiation, something you should understand. Naomi checked her watch. You have until noon tomorrow to decide. Choose wisely. She hung up. The next morning, an hour before the shareholders' meeting, Naomi received an envelope at her office. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Charles's resignation letter. Naomi read it once, then set it aside. No emotion, no satisfaction. Just another piece moved on the board. Patricia entered without knocking. The shareholders are gathering. Media is everywhere. This is going to be the most watched corporate meeting in years. She paused. Evelyn's here. Of course she is. She won't go down without a fight. Naomi, Patricia's voice was unusually serious. She brought lawyers, a lot of them. And she's telling people you fabricated the evidence, that you're behind a smear campaign. Let her talk. Facts don't care about her spin. Facts can be twisted by expensive lawyers, and the Whitmores have the best. Patricia sat down. I'm just saying, be ready. She's going to try to destroy you in that room. Naomi straightened her suit jacket. She already tried to destroy me. For 2 years, she made me feel like I was nothing, like I didn't belong, like my entire existence was an embarrassment to their precious family legacy. She picked up her briefcase. She failed then. She'll fail now. The shareholders' meeting was held in Whitmore Industries' Grand Conference Hall, a room designed to intimidate with its marble columns, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings of Whitmore ancestors. 200 shareholders filled the seats. Cameras lined the back. This meeting was being live-streamed. Naomi walked to the front. Every eye followed her. At the back of the room stood Evelyn Whitmore, surrounded by 5 lawyers in $1,000 suits. Her face was composed, but Naomi could see the rage burning underneath. "Good morning," Naomi began. Her voice was steady, clear. "For those who don't know me, I'm Naomi Bennett, the majority shareholder of Whitmore Industries as of 8 days ago. I'm here today to discuss the future of this company and to address the allegations that have surfaced regarding previous leadership." "Point of order," one of Evelyn's lawyers stood. "Ms. Bennett's acquisition of shares is under legal review. Until that's resolved, her authority as majority shareholder is disputed." Naomi smiled. She'd expected this. "Counselor, I've provided all documentation to the SEC. Every purchase was legal, disclosed properly, and followed all regulations. If you'd like to dispute that, feel free to file a motion. But it won't change the fact that I currently hold 51% of this company's voting shares." Murmurs rippled through the room. "Furthermore," Naomi continued, "the allegations against former leadership, specifically Evelyn Whitmore, are not fabrications. They're documented facts that multiple journalists, including the Financial Times, have verified independently. This company has been run corruptly for years. That ends today." "Lies!" Evelyn's voice cut through the room like a knife. She strode forward, her lawyers scrambling to keep up. "Everything this woman has said is a lie designed to steal my family's legacy." The room erupted in whispers. Evelyn reached the front, facing Naomi directly. "You were never good enough for my son. You were a mistake he made because he felt sorry for you. And when he realized that, when he tried to move on, you couldn't handle it. So you invented this conspiracy to take revenge." Naomi didn't flinch. "Is that what you tell yourself? That I'm just a bitter ex-wife?" She turned to the assembled shareholders. "Evelyn Whitmore paid $500,000 in bribes to city officials. She created shell companies to hide assets. She silenced harassment victims with hush money and NDAs. These aren't opinions, these are crimes, and they're all documented." "Documented by a woman who has every reason to lie." Evelyn's voice was shrill now. "You can't trust someone with an agenda. Then let's talk about agendas." Naomi pulled out her phone and projected an image onto the large screen behind her. It was an email from Evelyn to Charles, dated 2 years ago during Naomi and Charles's marriage. From Evelyn Whitmore to Charles Whitmore. Subject: the Naomi problem. "Charles, darling, we need to discuss your wife. She's becoming an embarrassment. Her speech at that conference was inappropriate. She's supposed to support you, not chase her own career. I've been patient, but it's time to consider ending this mistake. She doesn't fit our family. She never will. The wrong background, the wrong breeding, the wrong everything. Let's discuss options for a quiet divorce. I've already spoken to the lawyers about the prenup." The room went dead silent. Naomi let the email hang there for a moment. The Naomi problem. That's what I was to you, Evelyn. Not a person, not your son's wife. A problem to be solved. Evelyn's face was white. That's private correspondence. How did you... It was on Charles's company email server, which means it's company property, which means I have every legal right to access it as majority shareholder. Naomi advanced on her. You didn't just dislike me, Evelyn. You actively worked to destroy my marriage. And when you succeeded, when I left with nothing, you thought you'd won. I did win. You left. You got your pathetic settlement and disappeared. I left because staying would have killed my spirit, because every day in your presence made me feel worthless. Naomi's voice broke slightly, then strengthened. But you made a mistake, Evelyn. You underestimated me. You thought I was weak, broken, someone you could forget about. She pulled out another document. This is my MBA transcript from Columbia. Summa cum laude, top of my class. I was brilliant before I met your son. I just forgot it while I was trying to survive your cruelty. She held it up. I'm not the broken woman who left your house 2 years ago. I'm the woman who built an empire while you weren't paying attention. And now I own your empire. The shareholders began to applaud, slowly at first, then building. Evelyn looked around wildly. This is a coup, an illegal takeover. This is capitalism, Naomi corrected. You taught me that. The strong survive, the weak get pushed out. Well, guess what, Evelyn? I'm stronger than you now. She turned to the assembled shareholders. I'm proposing a complete restructuring of Whitmore Industries. New board, new leadership, new ethics. We'll cooperate fully with all investigations. We'll settle with victims of past corruption. We'll rebuild this company into something we can be proud of. All in favor? A forest of hands went up. Opposed? Only Evelyn's lawyers raised their hands, and after a moment, even they lowered them. It was over. Motion passes. Naomi looked at Evelyn. Security will escort you from the building. You're no longer welcome on company property. Evelyn stood there, trembling with rage and disbelief. You'll regret this. I'll destroy you. You already tried. Naomi's voice was soft but unyielding. You failed. Security appeared. Professional. Polite. Firm. As they led Evelyn away, she screamed back at Naomi. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing, just a girl who got lucky. Naomi watched her go. Then she turned back to the shareholders, composed and professional. Let's get to work, she said. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The SEC investigation expanded. Federal prosecutors got involved. Evelyn's lawyers tried to negotiate, but the evidence was overwhelming. Within a week, criminal charges were filed. Bribery, tax evasion, securities fraud. Evelyn Whitmore, the woman who'd ruled New York society for 3 decades, was arrested at her Connecticut estate. The photos were everywhere. Her in handcuffs, being led to a police car, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. Charles issued a statement through his lawyers, claiming he'd been unaware of his mother's activities. No one really believed him. But without concrete evidence of his involvement in the worst crimes, prosecutors focused on Evelyn. The trial would take months, maybe years, but the outcome seemed inevitable. Evelyn Whitmore was going to prison. 3 weeks after the shareholders' meeting, Naomi sat in her CEO office, formerly Evelyn's office, completely redecorated, when her assistant buzzed. Ms. Bennett, there's someone here to see you. Victoria Ashford. Naomi smiled. Send her in. Victoria entered wearing a sharp black suit, looking confident and slightly amused. Nice office. Very different from Evelyn's style. Everything here is different from Evelyn's style. That's the point. Naomi gestured to a chair. I've reviewed your consulting proposal. It's thorough, impressive, but I have one question. Shoot. Why do you really want to work here? You could consult anywhere. You have connections, money, options. Naomi leaned forward. So, why Whitmore Industries? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Because Evelyn Whitmore told me I wasn't good enough. Old money, but not the right kind. Close to the inner circle, but never quite in it. Her voice hardened. She spent 2 years making me feel like a failure. And when Charles finally broke up with me, at her insistence, she had the audacity to send me a note saying it was for the best. What did the note say? Dear Victoria, I hope you understand that some people are meant for the Whitmore family, and some people are meant to watch from a distance. You'll find your own level eventually. Best wishes, Evelyn. Victoria's jaw clenched. I kept that note for 8 years, waiting for my chance to prove her wrong. Naomi studied her, saw the pain underneath the polished exterior, saw a kindred spirit. You're hired, she said. But Victoria, we're not doing this for revenge. We're doing this to build something better. Something that doesn't require crushing people to prove our worth. Agreed, Victoria smiled. But if Evelyn happens to see us succeed where she failed, and it ruins her day, that's just a bonus. Just a bonus, Naomi agreed. They shook hands. 6 months later, Bennett Whitmore Industries, officially renamed, reported record profits. The company had restructured completely. New board, new ethics policies, new culture. And under Naomi's leadership, it was thriving. The shareholders who doubted her now praised her vision. The employees who'd been terrified of Evelyn now spoke openly about workplace improvements. The media that had called her a bitter ex-wife now profiled her as a transformational CEO. Naomi gave interviews, spoke at conferences, became a symbol of what was possible when you refused to accept someone else's definition of your worth. But the moment that mattered most came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Naomi was working late when her assistant buzzed again. Ms. Bennett, someone from the Brooklyn School District is here. Says it's about your donation? Naomi had been working on this for months. A $50 million initiative to fund business education programs in underserved schools. She wanted girls like her, brilliant, ambitious, but without connections, to have the resources they needed. Send them in. But it wasn't a school administrator. It was a young black girl, maybe 17, wearing a school uniform and carrying a folder. Ms. Bennett? The girl was nervous. I'm Jasmine Williams. I'm part of the first cohort for your scholarship program. Our teacher said we could submit business proposals for a chance to meet you, and I wrote one about sustainable fashion, and I won, and... She stopped, overwhelmed. Naomi stood and walked around her desk. Jasmine, breathe. Tell me about your proposal. It's about using recycled materials to create affordable fashion for teenagers. I did a whole market analysis and financial projections and... Jasmine opened her folder with shaking hands. I know it probably sounds silly to someone like you. It doesn't sound silly at all. It sounds brilliant. Naomi took the folder and gestured to the couch. Sit with me. Let's talk about your idea. They spent an hour discussing the proposal. Jasmine was sharp, creative, and so full of potential it made Naomi's heart ache. This girl was her. 2 years ago. Before Evelyn. Before Charles. Before she'd learned to doubt herself. Jasmine, Naomi said when they finished, I'm going to fund your first prototype. $10,000 to get started. And I'm assigning you a mentor from our company to help you develop the business plan. Jasmine's eyes went wide. Are you serious? Completely. You have something special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Naomi paused. And Jasmine? If anyone ever makes you feel like you don't belong somewhere because of who you are or where you're from, don't believe them. You belong anywhere you have the courage to stand. Jasmine nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Ms. Bennett. You have no idea what this means. After she left, Naomi sat alone in her office for a long time. She thought about the scared woman who'd signed divorce papers 2 years ago. The woman who'd believed she was worthless because Evelyn Whitmore said so. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who'd taken her pain and turned it into power. Not the destructive kind. The building kind. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Evelyn Whitmore sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for corporate fraud. Naomi read the article. Evelyn had looked old in the courtroom photos. Diminished. The woman who'd once commanded rooms with a glance now looked small in her prison uniform. Naomi felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no triumph, just a sense of closure. She deleted the alert and went back to work. Chapter 3. Final. The billionaire's mother insulted his black ex-wife, then discovered she is now the majority shareholder. 1 year after taking control of Bennett Whitmore Industries, Naomi received a letter. It came to her office, addressed in handwriting she recognized instantly. Prison mail. The return address was FCI Danbury, a federal correctional institution in Connecticut. Evelyn Whitmore had written to her. Naomi stared at the envelope for a full minute before opening it. Naomi, I don't expect you to read this. I wouldn't, if I were you. But the prison counselor says writing letters is part of my accountability process. So here we are. I've had a lot of time to think. About what I did. About who I was. About the empire I built. And how I built it. I told myself I was protecting my family. Protecting the legacy my father built. But the truth is, I was protecting my own power, my own relevance, and I destroyed anyone who threatened that, including you. You weren't a threat because you were incompetent or malicious. You were a threat because you were everything I couldn't control. Smart, independent, unwilling to shrink yourself to fit into my world. I see that now. Too late, but I see it. Charles came to visit last week. He told me about the company, about what you've done with it. Record profits, industry awards, a complete cultural transformation. He said you're doing things I never could have done, building things I never could have built. I should be angry. I should be bitter that you took everything I spent 30 years creating, but mostly I just feel tired. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. You weren't trying to destroy me. You were trying to survive me. And you did. Whatever happens to me, whatever legacy I leave behind, it won't be the empire. It will be the lessons. And the biggest lesson is this. Power built on cruelty doesn't last. It just creates enemies who eventually become stronger than you. You were stronger than me all along. I just couldn't see it. Evelyn Naomi read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer. She didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel vindicated. She felt sad. Sad for the woman Evelyn could have been. Sad for all the people she'd hurt. Sad for the years wasted on cruelty instead of building something real. But Naomi didn't write back. Some chapters needed to close without a response. That evening, Naomi attended a gala for the Bennett Foundation, the charitable organization she'd established 6 months ago to fund education initiatives in underserved communities. The event was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. 1,000 guests in designer gowns and tuxedos, champagne flowing, music playing. Everything Evelyn's world had been, but different. Different because the guest list included teachers, community organizers, students who'd received scholarships, people who'd actually earned their place, not just inherited it. Naomi wore a custom emerald gown, her natural hair styled in elegant locks, and walked through the crowd with her head high. "Ms. Bennett," a reporter from Vogue approached. "Can we get a quote about tonight's fundraiser?" "Of course." "Tonight, we're raising funds to expand our business education programs to 50 more schools across the country. We've already seen incredible results. Students starting their own businesses, getting into top colleges, breaking cycles of poverty." Naomi smiled. "This is what wealth should do. Create opportunities, not just protect dynasties." "There's been talk about you possibly running for office. Any truth to that?" "Right now I'm focused on running Bennett Whitmore and expanding the foundation. But I've learned never to say never." Naomi's eyes sparkled. 2 years ago, I would have said I'd never own a Fortune 500 company. Look how that turned out. The reporter laughed and moved on. Victoria appeared at Naomi's elbow, carrying 2 champagne flutes. You're getting good at this. At what? Being the woman everyone wants to photograph, the woman everyone wants to interview, the woman who makes headlines just by existing. Victoria handed her a glass. You've become what Evelyn always pretended to be, actually powerful. Evelyn was powerful. Evelyn was feared. There's a difference. Victoria gestured to the crowd. Look around. These people are here because they believe in what you're building, not because they're afraid of what you'll do if they don't show up. Naomi looked at the diverse crowd, at faces that had never been welcome at Whitmore family events, at people who were here because they'd been lifted up, not pushed down. It feels fragile sometimes, Naomi admitted quietly, like it could all disappear. Like I could wake up and be that scared woman signing divorce papers again. You won't, because that woman doesn't exist anymore. Victoria's voice was firm. You killed her when you bought the first share. You buried her when you walked into that boardroom. She's gone, Naomi. You're what's left. Before Naomi could respond, someone called her name. She turned. Charles Whitmore stood at the edge of the crowd, wearing a tuxedo that looked slightly too big on him. He'd lost weight, looked older. The entitled air was gone, replaced by something diminished. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Naomi glanced at Victoria, who shrugged. I'll be at the bar if you need an escape route. Naomi walked with Charles to a quieter corner of the museum, beneath a painting of a naval battle. How appropriate. You look good, Charles said. Happy. I am. The company is thriving. I've been following the news, record profits, industry recognition. You've done things I never could have. Was there a point to this conversation? Charles flinched. I came to apologize for everything, for not standing up to my mother, for letting her treat you like you were nothing, for choosing her over you every single time. His voice cracked. You deserved better. You deserved a husband who protected you. I was a coward. Naomi looked at him. Really looked. She waited to feel something. Anger, satisfaction, anything. But there was just emptiness. You were a coward, she agreed. But Charles, I don't think about you anymore. I don't wonder what might have been. I don't miss what we had. She paused. Because what we had wasn't real. It was a performance. You performed being a progressive husband. I performed being the perfect wife. And beneath it all, we were both miserable. I loved you. Maybe. In your way. Naomi's voice softened slightly. But your love wasn't enough to overcome your fear of your mother, and that tells me everything I need to know. I'm different now. Therapy, self-reflection. I see things clearly. Good for you, genuinely. I hope you become a better person. Naomi straightened. But I don't need your apology to move forward. I already have. I took everything your mother tried to use to destroy me, my background, my race, my unsuitability for your world, and I turned it into strength. I know. That's why I'm here. Not to ask for forgiveness. Just to tell you... Charles's eyes were wet. I'm proud of you. For surviving us. For thriving without us. For proving my mother wrong about everything. Naomi nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. But Charles, don't come to these events anymore. This is my world now, not yours, and I need you to respect that boundary. I understand. He turned to leave, then paused. Naomi, if I could go back, if I could do it all differently. But you can't. None of us can. Naomi's voice was final. Goodbye, Charles. He left. Victoria reappeared with fresh champagne. How'd it go? He apologized, said he was proud of me. And? And nothing. It's over. Really, truly over. Naomi took a sip. I spent so long wanting him to see what he'd lost, to regret choosing his mother over me. But now that he does, she shrugged. It doesn't matter. I don't need his validation anymore. Character growth. I'm impressed. Victoria clinked glasses with her. So what's next for Naomi Bennett, billionaire CEO and philanthropist? Naomi looked around the gala, at the success, at the impact, at the future she'd built from the ashes of her worst moment. More of this. Bigger. Better. She smiled. I'm thinking about acquiring 2 more companies next quarter. Both have toxic leadership that needs cleaning out. Both could be transformed into something better. You're becoming a serial corporate reformer. Someone has to be. There are too many Evelyns out there, too many companies built on cruelty and corruption. Naomi's eyes glinted. If I can fix them, make them better, create actual value instead of just extracting it, why wouldn't I? Because it's exhausting? Because you've already won? Because you could retire to a beach somewhere and never work another day? I could, but I won't. Naomi set down her glass. Because 2 years ago I was broken, defeated, convinced I was worthless. And if I can stop even one person from feeling that way, if I can create workplaces where people like me aren't destroyed for not fitting in, then every exhausting day is worth it. 6 months later, Naomi stood in front of Congress. She'd been called to testify about corporate governance reform. The Whitmore Industries scandal had become a case study in how wealthy families abused power, and legislators wanted her perspective. Ms. Bennett, the committee chair began, you've become something of a symbol for corporate accountability, but critics say you're just a former spouse with an axe to grind. How do you respond? Naomi leaned forward to the microphone. Senator, I was a former spouse with evidence of criminal activity. There's a difference. I didn't invent Evelyn Whitmore's crimes. I exposed them. But don't you benefit from that exposure? You now control a company worth billions? I benefit because I followed the law and purchased shares legally. Evelyn Whitmore went to prison because she broke the law repeatedly for decades. Naomi's voice was calm but firm. I'm not a victim anymore, Senator. I'm a CEO, and I'm using that position to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to others. How? By implementing real ethics oversight, by creating channels for employees to report misconduct without fear, by proving that companies can be profitable and ethical. She paused. The old model, Evelyn's model, says you have to be ruthless to succeed, crush your enemies, protect your power at all costs. But that model creates corruption. It creates cultures where abuse is normalized. It creates Whitmore Industries. And your model? My model says power is a responsibility, not a weapon. Success should lift people up, not tear them down. And companies that embrace that philosophy don't just survive, they thrive. Naomi pulled out a report. Bennett Whitmore Industries has increased profits by 47% since I took over. Employee satisfaction is up 62%. We've had 0 harassment complaints in a year, and we're on track to be carbon neutral by 2026. She looked directly at the camera. You can be successful without being cruel. You can build empires without destroying people. I'm living proof. The testimony went viral. Within days, Naomi was on the cover of Time magazine, the new face of corporate America, how Naomi Bennett is rewriting the rules. Harvard Business School asked her to guest lecture. 3 more companies reached out asking for consulting. A major publisher offered her a book deal. You're becoming more famous than you were as Charles's wife, Patricia observed, reading the Time article in Naomi's office. Good. This time I earned it. What about the book? Are you going to write it? Naomi considered. Maybe, but not about revenge or corporate takeovers. about transformation, about how you rebuild yourself when everything is taken from you. She smiled. That's the story people need to hear. 2 years after the shareholders' meeting, Naomi received an unexpected visitor. She was working late, a habit she'd never broken, when her assistant buzzed. "Ms. Bennett, there's a woman here who says she's Evelyn Whitmore's sister, Margaret Whitmore Sterling. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." Naomi hadn't known Evelyn had a sister. But then, there was a lot about the Whitmore family she'd never been told. "Send her in." Margaret Whitmore Sterling was in her 60s, elegant but softer than Evelyn. She wore a simple black dress and carried herself with quiet dignity. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for seeing me without notice. Mrs. Sterling, please, sit." Naomi gestured to the couch. "Can I offer you anything?" "No, thank you. I won't take much of your time." Margaret sat, folding her hands. "I came to tell you something about my sister, something the family never talked about." Naomi waited. Evelyn wasn't always what she became. When we were young, she was different, kinder, curious. She wanted to be a scientist, actually. Can you imagine? Naomi tried and failed. But our father, your company's founder, he had very specific ideas about what Whitmore women should be. Decorative, supportive, silent. Margaret's voice was sad. Evelyn tried to fight him, applied to MIT, got accepted. But father refused to pay for it, said education would make her unmarriageable. So she married the man father chose, had Charles, and slowly became the woman father wanted her to be. I'm sorry she went through that, but it doesn't excuse what she did. No, it doesn't. Margaret met Naomi's eyes. But I wanted you to understand that Evelyn's cruelty wasn't just about you. It was about every opportunity she'd been denied, every dream she'd had to kill. She saw you, young, educated, with choices she never had, and she hated you for it. That's not my fault. I know. But I thought understanding might help with whatever you're feeling now. Margaret stood. Evelyn will likely die in prison. The appeals have all failed. And Charles, he's lost, directionless. The Whitmore name is tarnished beyond repair. And you're telling me this because you won, completely, utterly. And I wanted to make sure you understand what you won. Margaret moved toward the door. You destroyed a family, a legacy, generations of history. I'm not saying you were wrong to do it, but I wanted you to feel the weight of it. After she left, Naomi sat alone in the darkness of her office. Did she feel the weight? Yes. But did she regret it? She thought about Jasmine Williams and the hundreds of other students her foundation supported. About the employees at Bennett Whitmore who now worked in a culture of respect instead of fear. About the changes she'd sparked in corporate America. No, she didn't regret it. The Whitmore legacy was cruelty, corruption, power without accountability. If she'd destroyed that, if she'd ended that, the world was better for it. 3 years after the takeover, Naomi stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Bennett Center for Business Ethics at Columbia University. The building was beautiful, modern, sustainable, funded entirely by her personal donations. It would house programs for first-generation college students, research on corporate accountability, and free legal clinics for workers facing discrimination. Today represents more than just a new building, Naomi told the assembled crowd of students, faculty, and journalists. It represents a commitment to changing how we think about success. For too long, we've celebrated ruthlessness. We've admired people who climbed to the top by stepping on others. We've confused cruelty with strength. She paused, looking at the faces watching her. So many of them young, full of potential. But strength isn't about dominating others. It's about lifting them up. Success isn't about accumulating power. It's about using power to create change. Naomi smiled. I learned that the hard way. I was broken down, discarded, told I was nothing, and I had two choices: believe it or prove them wrong. I chose to prove them wrong, and in doing so, I discovered something important. The people who try to make you feel small are usually the smallest people of all. They're afraid. Afraid that if you realize your worth, you'll stop accepting their version of your story. She cut the ribbon. Cameras flashed. Students cheered. Later, at the reception, a young black woman approached Naomi nervously. Ms. Bennett, I'm Alicia, first-year MBA student. I just wanted to say... Her voice broke. My mother was a domestic worker. My father drove a bus. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and sometimes I feel like I don't belong here. Like everyone can see, I'm not from their world. Naomi took her hand. I know exactly how that feels. Really? But you're... Alicia gestured helplessly. You're you. You own a Fortune 500 company. You're on magazine covers. And 3 years ago, I was signing divorce papers that gave me $2 million in exchange for 3 years of my life. I was convinced I was worthless. That I'd always be an outsider. Naomi squeezed her hand. But here's what I learned. Belonging isn't something other people grant you. It's something you claim for yourself. How? By refusing to shrink, by taking up space, by being so undeniably excellent that they have no choice but to acknowledge you. Naomi smiled. You belong at Columbia, Alicia. You belong in every room you walk into. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that. Alicia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. After she left, Victoria appeared. You're collecting protégés. I'm creating what I wish I'd had. Mentors, support, people who understood. Naomi watched Alicia disappear into the crowd. No one should have to fight alone the way I did. You didn't fight alone. You had me, Patricia, Sarah Chen. I had you after I'd already lost everything. I had to hit bottom before I found allies. Naomi's voice was firm. These students won't have to. They'll have support from day one. Resources, guidance, protection. You're building an army. I'm building a movement. Naomi smiled. Evelyn Whitmore had power. I'm creating power for others. There's a difference. 5 years after taking control of Bennett Whitmore Industries, Naomi was invited to speak at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The invitation itself was symbolic. She was now considered one of the most influential business leaders globally. But what made it significant was who else was speaking. The panel was called Redefining Corporate Leadership and included 3 other CEOs, all white men over 50 who'd built their empires the traditional way. Ruthlessly. Naomi was the outlier. Young, black, female. A CEO who'd literally taken power from an old money family. She sat on stage, confident in a sharp white suit, while the moderator introduced the panel. Ms. Bennett, you've been described as a disruptor in corporate America. Do you see yourself that way? I see myself as someone who refuses to accept that cruelty is the price of success, Naomi replied. The old model of leadership, the model represented by some of my fellow panelists, prioritizes profit over people, competition over collaboration, power over purpose. She looked directly at the camera. That model is dying, and good riddance. One of the other CEOs, a man named Robert Kendrick, who'd made billions in private equity, interrupted. With all due respect, Ms. Bennett, your success came from a very specific situation. You can't extrapolate from your personal revenge story to broader business principles. The room went silent. Naomi smiled. You're right, Mr. Kendrick. My story is specific. A woman married into a corrupt family, was abused and discarded, then legally acquired majority shares and exposed criminal activity. That is personal. She leaned forward. But the principles aren't. Transparency, accountability, treating employees like human beings instead of disposable resources. Those principles work everywhere. In theory, but in practice, companies have to make hard choices. Hard choices or cruel choices. Because I've found that most hard choices are just excuses for treating people badly while maximizing profit. Naomi pulled out her phone and projected data onto the screen. Since I took over Bennett Whitmore, we've increased employee wages by 23%, implemented profit sharing, created industry-leading parental leave policies, and our profits are up 47%. She let that sink in. You can be ethical and profitable, Mr. Kendrick. You just have to care about more than your own wealth. The audience applauded. Kendrick looked annoyed. Easy to say when you inherited a company through a divorce settlement. I didn't inherit anything. I bought 51% of shares legally on the open market. I earned my position. Naomi's voice hardened. And I find it interesting that when a white man acquires a company, he's called a savvy investor. But when I do it, I'm inheriting through divorce. What's the difference, Mr. Kendrick, besides my gender and race? The moderator tried to intervene, but Naomi wasn't finished. For centuries, people like you have built empires by exploiting others. And when people like me succeed by actually following the rules, by being better, by creating value instead of extracting it, you call it luck, or revenge, or anything except what it is, superior leadership. The audience erupted in applause. The clip went viral within hours, millions of views, thousands of articles. Naomi Bennett trended worldwide. And in a prison cell in Connecticut, Evelyn Whitmore watched the clip on a tablet and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not for herself. For the woman she'd tried to destroy. The woman who'd become everything Evelyn had never been allowed to be. 10 years later, Naomi stood in front of Bennett Whitmore Industries headquarters, renamed Bennett Global 10 years ago to reflect its expansion into international markets. She was 50 now, gray threading through her locks, laugh lines around her eyes. Still beautiful, but in a different way. Earned, not given. Behind her, the company she'd built employed 100,000 people across 6 continents. Bennett Global was worth $50 billion. It had become a model for ethical business practices worldwide. But that's not why Naomi was here today. Today was the 10th anniversary of the takeover, and she'd organized a special event. Inside the building, 200 people gathered, employees who'd been there from the beginning, students who'd received Bennett Foundation scholarships, activists who'd partnered with the company on social justice initiatives. And in the front row sat Jasmine Williams, now 27, CEO of her own sustainable fashion company, a rising star in the industry. 10 years ago, Naomi began, I walked into a boardroom and claimed what was mine. Not just a company, not just wealth, but my dignity, my worth, my right to exist in spaces that were never designed for people like me. She paused, looking at the diverse faces watching her. I thought that was the victory. Taking power from people who'd abused it, exposing corruption, rebuilding something better. And those things mattered. But the real victory, Naomi's voice caught slightly, was what came after. The real victory was Jasmine starting her company, was the thousands of students who've gone through our programs, was the employees who tell me this is the best place they've ever worked, was changing the conversation about what business can be. She smiled. Evelyn Whitmore wanted to erase me. She tried to make me believe I was nothing, and in fighting her I discovered something. You can't erase people who refuse to disappear. You can't defeat people who turn their pain into purpose. So this anniversary isn't about revenge. It's not about what I took from the Whitmores. It's about what I built with it. What we built together." The room erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Naomi stood alone in her office one last time. Tomorrow, she'd be announcing her retirement as CEO. Not because she was done, but because she'd trained her successor, a brilliant woman named Keisha Johnson who'd started as an entry-level analyst and risen through merit alone. It was time. Time to pass the torch. Time to focus on the foundation. Time to write that book she'd been planning for years. Time to finally rest. Her phone buzzed. An email from an address she didn't recognize. She almost deleted it. But curiosity won. "Ms. Bennett, you don't know me. My name is Elizabeth Whitmore. I'm Charles's daughter. I'm 19, starting college next month at Columbia. I've wanted to write to you for years, but I didn't know how. What do you say to the woman who destroyed your family? The woman your grandmother went to prison because of? The woman your father still talks about with this weird mix of regret and respect? But I've been reading about you, about Bennett Global, about the foundation, about everything you've built, and I realized something. You didn't destroy my family. My grandmother did that herself. You just made sure everyone knew about it. I'm studying business at Columbia. I want to make a difference the way you have. But I'm terrified because of my name, because of what my grandmother did, because everyone will assume I'm like her. I don't know if you'll even read this. I don't know if you'll respond, but I wanted you to know. The next generation of Whitmores isn't like the last one. We're learning from your example, not theirs. Thank you for showing us there's a better way." Elizabeth Naomi read the email 3 times. Then she wrote back, "Elizabeth, come see me. Let's have coffee. Let's talk about the future instead of the past. The sins of the previous generation don't have to be your burden. You get to choose who you become. And if you choose to be better, which it sounds like you already have, then I'd be honored to help however I can. Welcome to Columbia. Welcome to your future." NB, she hit send. And in that moment, Naomi understood what victory really meant. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't destruction. It was transformation. She'd taken everything Evelyn Whitmore built on cruelty and transformed it into something that actually helped people. She'd turned her pain into power, not to dominate others, but to lift them up. And now, the next generation, even the Whitmore name itself, could be part of that transformation. That was the win. Not the money, not the empire, not even the satisfaction of watching Evelyn fall. The win was breaking the cycle. The win was building something that outlasted the hurt. The win was being so undeniably excellent that even her enemies' children wanted to learn from her. Naomi closed her laptop, turned off her office lights, and walked out of Bennett Global headquarters for the last time as CEO. She wasn't bitter, wasn't broken, wasn't angry. She was free. Free from Evelyn's voice telling her she didn't belong. Free from Charles's weakness and betrayal. Free from the woman she'd been when she signed those divorce papers 10 years ago. That woman was gone. In her place stood Naomi Bennett, CEO, philanthropist, mentor, and proof that you could lose everything and build something better from the ruins. As she walked to her car, Naomi's phone buzzed one last time. A text from Jasmine. "Thank you for everything. You changed my life." Naomi smiled and typed back, "No, you changed your own life. I just showed you it was possible." And that, she thought as she drove home through the Manhattan streets she'd once walked broken and defeated, was the entire point. Not to save people, but to show them they could save themselves. That was the legacy worth leaving. That was the victory worth fighting for. And that was why, when people asked her years later if she regretted how everything happened, the pain, the humiliation, the brutal fight, she always said the same thing. No, because it made me who I am, and I wouldn't change that for anything. The end. Epilogue. 15 years later. The business school classroom was packed with students. Naomi stood at the front, now 65, her locks completely silver, wearing a comfortable sweater instead of a power suit. She was a visiting professor at Columbia these days, teaching a course on ethical leadership. "Today we're going to talk about the Whitmore Industries case," she said. "Who here has heard of it?" Every hand went up. Of course. It was taught in business schools worldwide now. Good. So you know the basic story. Corrupt family, whistleblower, corporate takeover, justice served. Naomi smiled. But let me tell you what the textbooks don't say. She pulled up a photo. Herself, 15 years ago, walking out of that first shareholders meeting. This woman had just destroyed the family that destroyed her. She had power, money, control, and she was terrified. The students looked surprised. Terrified because winning the battle was easy compared to what came next. Actually leading. Actually building something better. Actually proving that everything she'd said about ethical business wasn't just rhetoric. Naomi pulled up another slide. Bennett Global's current stats. $80 billion company, 200,000 employees, carbon negative, living wage for all workers, industry leading in every metric. This is what's possible when you lead with values instead of fear, when you treat people like humans instead of resources, when you understand that the most profitable thing you can do is be decent. A hand went up. A young white man in the back. But Professor Bennett, not everyone has the advantage of taking over an existing company. How do we apply these principles when starting from scratch? You start small. You make ethical choices, even when they cost you. You build trust. You prove that you mean what you say. Naomi smiled. I didn't start with billions. I started with $500,000 and a promise to myself that I'd never become the people who'd hurt me. Another hand. A black woman in the front row. Professor, do you ever feel guilty about what happened to the Whitmore family? Naomi considered the question carefully. Guilty? No. I didn't commit crimes. I didn't destroy lives. I exposed someone who'd done both. But do I feel compassion? Yes. Evelyn Whitmore was a product of her time, her upbringing, her father's cruelty. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand it. She paused. And Charles, he was weak. But he wasn't evil, just a man who never learned to stand up for anything. I feel sorry for him more than anything else. Whatever happened to him? Someone asked. He runs a small consulting firm now, does okay, never remarried. We don't speak, but I hear things. Naomi shrugged. He's living the life he chose. The class continued. Questions about strategy, ethics, leadership, transformation. And when it ended, a student approached. Elizabeth Whitmore, now 34, working on her MBA while running a nonprofit. Thanks for not making it weird, Elizabeth said quietly. Why would I? You're not your grandmother. You're not your father. You're you. Naomi smiled. How's the nonprofit? Good, hard, underfunded, but we're helping people. Elizabeth hesitated. I'm applying to work at Bennett Global. I know it's strange given everything. It's not strange. It's evolution. If you're qualified, apply. Simple as that. And if I get in? Then you'll work harder than anyone else to prove you earned it. Which, knowing you, you will. Naomi touched her shoulder. The sins of the past don't have to define your future, Elizabeth. You've proven that already. After everyone left, Naomi sat alone in the empty classroom. She thought about that terrified woman walking out of the shareholders meeting 15 years ago. The woman who'd thought winning meant destroying her enemies. That woman had learned something important. Winning meant transformation, not just of companies or systems, but of yourself. Naomi had transformed from victim to survivor, to leader, to teacher. And now, in teaching the next generation, including a Whitmore, she'd completed the circle. She'd turned her greatest wound into her greatest strength. And that, finally, was enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Dinner tonight? My place, celebrating 15 years of your badassery." Naomi smiled and texted back, "See you at 7. Bring good wine." She packed her bag, turned off the lights, and left the classroom. Behind her, on the whiteboard, she'd written a quote that would stay there for the next class. "Power built on cruelty dies. Power built on justice endures. Choose wisely." It was the lesson Evelyn Whitmore had never learned. The lesson Charles Whitmore had learned too late. But the lesson that Naomi Bennett had not just learned. She'd embodied it, taught it, and passed it on to the next generation. That was the real victory, not revenge, legacy.